Hello everyone, welcome to the Scumdogs Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and in today's Cryptid Corner mini-episode, today we're going to have two very bizarre stories to read through, folks. Both of them are truly interesting. Today we have lake monsters and alien reptoids, folks. Let's get into the first article titled, Devil's Lake, Wisconsin, the place of many dead and the monster beneath the bluffs. Let's get into this article now and read exactly what it's about. Devil's Lake in Sauk County, Wisconsin, has long carried a reputation that goes far beyond its dramatic quartzite bluffs and cold enclosed waters. Known through older traditions as a sacred or spirit lake, the area has also become associated with burial mounds, phantom canoes, shadowy camp intrusions, and stories of something large moving beneath the surface. Let's read this article and read exactly what the experiencer had to live through, folks. Here's the case file for it. Location: Devil's Lake State Park, Sauk County, Wisconsin, near Baraboo. Primary phenomena: lake monster legends, phantom canoe, shadowy campsite prowlers, burial mound associations, regional apparition reports, historical anchors, indigenous sacred landscape, effigy mounds, glacial lake formation, early settler renaming, state park founding in 1911, known folklore elements, tentacled lake creature, long-necked fish-like animal, ghost canoe, place of many dead, reputation, tragic death legends. Regional connections: Baraboo ghost elephant or mastodon stories, Wisconsin Bigfoot traditions, southern Wisconsin anomalous creature lore. Investigative value high because multiple categories of phenomena are attached to one compact geographic area. Let's read the place of many dead. Let's learn more about this lake. Devil's Lake sits beneath steep ancient bluffs near Baraboo, Wisconsin, where the land itself seems to hold memory. The lake is visually beautiful, but many visitors have noticed a heaviness to it over the years. It is the kind of place where the rocks, the water, the mists, and the old stories all seem to work together. The area is known for its unusual geological features, including glacial markings, ancient rock formations, and evidence of deep natural history. The surrounding Baraboo Range and the lake basin were shaped by glacial action, leaving Devil's Lake enclosed by dramatic quartzite bluffs and glacial deposits. Wisconsin DNR notes that Devil's Lake State Park was founded in 1911, while the broader park history includes improbable and remarkable stories tied to the land and lake, but the geology is only the surface layer. Within Devil's Lake State Park are important effigy mounds, including animal-shaped forms, traditionally identified as bear, lynx, and bird figures. These mounds are sacred indigenous burial and ceremonial places, and modern park sources emphasize that they hold deep cultural and spiritual importance for the Ho-Chunk community and other culturally associated native nations. Visitors are urged not to walk on them and to treat them with reverence. That sacred context is crucial. Devil's Lake was never just a scenic lake. Long before it became a state park, it was a spiritually charged landscape. Older accounts say that the lake was known to native people as Spirit Lake, Mystery Lake, Sacred Lake, or Bad Spirit Lake, depending on the source and translation. Some modern summaries identify Ho-Chunk and Nakota traditions associated with the area, with the name itself evoking awe, danger, and sacred power. One of the most persistent legends involves a great aquatic creature said to have lived in the lake. In one version, a native chief led a party of young warriors across the lake at night under the moonlight. Something rose from the water. Tentacles reportedly broke the surface, overturned the canoe, and dragged the men beneath the cold, dark water. According to the tradition, their screams carried back to shore, and the people who witnessed the attack believed that something monstrous occurred and that something occupied the lake. Another legend tells of a great drought. As the water level dropped, the lake was said to divide into two smaller pools separated by a strip of exposed mud. One morning, the people saw an enormous fish-like creature stranded between the waters. It was described as having a broad body, long neck, and small head. It thrashed and struggled for days before finally freeing itself and slipping back into the deeper water. That's odd, folks. Does anyone ever basically ask how these Indians know what tentacles are? I mean, they mentioned that this creature had tentacles, but then again, I looked into the Great Lakes and there are animals within the lake that have tentacles, so maybe that explains how these native people knew about something like that fact, folks. Because when they mentioned tentacles in the story, folks, I wondered why. But now, let's get back to the article. That description has led later writers and cryptid researchers to compare the creature to a plesiosaur-like animal, while others have suggested something more octopus-like serpentine or spiritually symbolic. The source material provided for this report also preserves both versions, including the Drought account, the Tentacle Lake monster tradition, and the idea that Devil's Lake may have been viewed as a place where a dangerous water being had to be respected or appeased. The lake monster tradition did not end with the old stories. The supplied research notes also refer to an 1889 lake monster report, and later local folklore includes mysterious wakes on the lake, a ghostly canoe seen in cold mist, and shadowy presences moving around in tents in the summer of 1970. In those 1970 reports, campers allegedly complained about dark somethings prowling near their campsite, while natural resource personnel reportedly stated that bears were not known in the immediate area. So that's another thing to take into question, folks. Bears are not known in this area, so what was prowling around? That's terrifying. But there's more to read through, folks. There are also strange regional overlays. Nearby Baraboo, only a few miles north of Devil's Lake, had its own unusual reputation, including stories from the 1970s involving giant ghost elephants or mastodon-like apparitions. The Devil's Lake area also appears in modern discussions of paranormal tourism and regional folklore as a place more associated with hairy creatures, strange sounds, lake monsters, and elusive presences than with standard ghost stories alone. The Phantom Canoe legend is especially interesting. Modern-day Devil's Lake folklore sources describe an apparition of a Native American figure in a ghostly canoe seen moving across the lake at night. While details are sparse, the image fits the larger pattern of the lake as a place where water, death, memory, and older spiritual narratives remain intertwined. There are also more grounded but still curious historical reports. A 1901 newspaper account mentioned a man who claimed to have seen an alligator in Devil's Lake, adding yet another aquatic anomaly to the site's already crowded folklore profile. Taken together, Devil's Lake presents a rare concentration of themes: ancient sacred landscape, burial mounds, glacial isolation, cold, deep water, drowning legends, phantom craft, aquatic monsters, shadowy campsite intrusions, and regional high strangeness. Whether these stories represent literal creatures, folklore shaped by danger and death, intergenerational memory, or something more elusive, the location has earned its reputation as the place of many dead. For film research, the strongest angle may not be to focus on a single creature in the lake. The stronger story is the lake itself as a living stage, a boundary site where human fear, sacred geography, ancestral memory, and anomalous encounters continue to overlap. Very interesting, folks. So, what do you make of it? That this lake might be a window area? Maybe there's some sort of portal that basically allows these entities through. Here's a picture of maybe the lake monster, folks. It's all blurry, but it looks serpentine, much like a plesiosaur or like basically Loch Ness, and it's very odd. Here is another picture, folks, which looks like, well, a couple of bumps in the water, but it looks a little more interesting than some other lake photos, I'll tell you that, folks. But it could be maybe a giant eel, perhaps. That could be an explanation for it. Either way, very interesting article, folks. But let's now move over and turn our eyes to the next article, which is titled Northwest Michigan Alien Contactee Describes Reptilian Hybrid Sun Regression Memories and a 1961 Daylight UFO Sighting. Let's get into this bizarre account that has, well, many details in it, folks, and many points to consider. This account was forwarded to me several years ago by another researcher, a friend of the experiencer, after he had read my book, Alien Disclosure Experiences Expose Reality. The experiencer, who lived in northwest Michigan, described a lifelong pattern that began with a daylight UFO sighting in 1961 and later developed into claims of abduction, regression, memories, hybrid contact, and ongoing communication. What makes this report especially compelling is the experiencer's insistence that there were witnesses, including professionals, law enforcement connections, and recorded regression sessions. But let's read on, folks. At that time, I was living in northwest Michigan. My hybrid son was taken in mid-April of 2012. They used the word claimed. I carried him for about 2 months. I knew he was a boy. I named him Drax. The name came from Max, his human father, and from the Dragonian reptoids I believe I am involved with. During my pregnancy, my ex was somehow shut down and I was taken for several hours. When I was coming to, I saw a figure standing beside the bed. It was making circular motions above my stomach. I knew I had just been returned. I knew that they were making one last check on the baby. He was later brought to me on October 10th, 2012 for feeding and bonding. He would leave claw marks on me while feeding, though I do not believe he meant to hurt me. The marks looked red and infected, but there was absolutely no feeling in them. They were basically gone within 4 hours. Very interesting, folks. So, could this woman have actually basically been abducted and carried a hybrid child before it was taken from her? We have to consider that in this story, folks, that maybe she's telling the truth, but we'll discuss that point a little later. There is so much more to this than I can possibly write down. They have been manipulating my pineal gland. They can use me like a computer, loading and downloading information. I often feel as if I'm ahead of time. I've received many messages from them, and I continue to receive them. I have many credible witnesses. These include an attorney, a fireman and farmer, and a prison guard. I have been regressed 5 times, and some of those sessions were recorded. The psychologist who regressed me would be willing to speak. I need help. I've reached out to many people. The only time I feel okay is when I am sharing what is happening to me. Some of the things taking place are difficult to talk about because they make others very uncomfortable, so I am left holding all of this inside. Sadly, folks, I do feel that that's probably the truth, that this woman here probably has a lot of things that she can't really share with other people because they'll ridicule her and there's no one really to talk about with it. That's the sad state of affairs sometimes with aliens. But let's now get back to her story. I've been doing illustrations, writing everything down, and keeping track of dates as best I can. This all started in 1961 when I was 12 years old. It began with a daylight sighting that had several witnesses, including 2 police officers. I am still in contact with the chief of police from back then. Unfortunately, he is now 93 years old and in poor health with both good and bad memory days. He was at the police station at the time and said he fielded calls for more than 20 minutes. One of the calls came from a fellow officer at the scene. Another came from a city councilwoman. After the signing, I was discouraged from talking about it. The idea was that if I stayed quiet, I might forget it. It was the worst thing my parents could have done. I never talked about it for 50 years. I'm not surprised, folks. Back then, it was basically thought that you shouldn't talk about these things because they think you were crazy, because they would want you to have an ordinary life. Sadly, that didn't seem to have happened here, but let's read on. It was only when I met a ufologist and college professor on September 1st, 2011, that I finally opened up. I told him about the sign. That was all I thought it had been for 50 years, but I had lived with fear, panic attacks, and trauma from it. I had not had a pap smear in 20 years and still could not watch someone receive a shot or an IV because of the trauma that she had from all of this, folks. I'm not surprised. Now, very odd story, folks, but we're not done with it yet. Let's finish it off now. The professor was a smart man. He suspected there was more to the sign than I remembered, so he found a regression therapist. At the end of my first regression, I felt myself immobilized and moving upward into the ship. One of my very first messages they gave me in 2011 was, all memories are packed and taken with us in each new life. When the load becomes too heavy or we no longer have the energy to carry it, we travel as light, knowledge, and energy. That message has stayed with me. I'm not surprised, folks. Do you think that this woman was actually abducted by aliens? Remember, she was 12 years old in 1961, right, folks? Or at least that's what I get here, folks. She was a child. Now, apparently this all happened with the alien baby in 2011, folks. So she'd be well past, I think, the point of having babies at that point, folks. Because she would have been in her 20s during the 1970s and her 30s in the 1980s, folks. And in 2011, she would have been well past the point of having children, folks, because she would have already been through menopause, sometime in the 90s. So that is an interesting fact, folks. But that's something we've seen in other abductee stories with hybrid children, that sometimes these older women will also be used for, procreation. It just doesn't happen that often. Either way, with this story and the last story with the lake, folks, mysterious things are occurring. Could they be connected? I mean, the tentacled entity could have been some sort of alien reptilian being or drone, or maybe just an ultra-terrestrial presence like these reptilians. Either way, truly fascinating, folks. There might be more to this as well, and maybe we'll learn more about it. Either way, we're at the end, so please go subscribe to my YouTube channel. Read comics that are bad for you. You can use the YouTube link down below in descriptions of the chat to go subscribe to me. Hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure to hit the part of the bell that'll give you all future notifications, and please share this video out. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow with another great video, so be sure to come back again then. Until next time, folks, I'll see you all again soon.